Hello, my friend. My name is Anton from conditional.com, and we continue our Code Express series. Today is the 8th session, and we will speak about the conditional instruction, how it is created in the Python, and what are the advantages of using it and how you could use it. So, conditional means that your code has a sort of decision-making point where it needs to go either one way or around. And by making the condition, you allow this point to happen. So if something is true, so if your conditional check that you're creating is true, then you would execute one part of the code, and if condition is not true, then it will be going through the another path. However, there are not only if-else paths, there are a possibility to create much more, because the full construction sounds is if, condition, some actions, else, if, another condition, another set of action, and in the end, it might be else when the sort of last resort actions which are taken once no previous actions or conditions were matched, and therefore no previous actions were taken. As usual, let's get started taking a look into our code so that we could create the best possible environment for you. So let me take a look how could it be working. So I think it will be working fine now. So we'll create a file called the conditional or conditions.py. So inside this file, we need, as usual, to provide the path to the our Sheban, so to the Python. So that's why we need, as usual, to check where they pass to our Python 3.8. So we copy this path inside of our file and we get started. So to start with, we would be working with some sort of the list that we will create using the approach which we have taken previously so far. So we'll create a list called interfaces, pretty much like we had it in the previous discussion. So this list would have two elements inside. So as you remember, we could create list in the multi-string scenario. So our list would contain two entries, so two dictionaries which would have multiple elements inside, so sort of nested dictionary. So the one element would be name, so I mean the key would be name with the value say as ETH1. We would have another key called enabled, which would have a boolean value true, and we would have another key having calling IPv4, and it would contain sort of IP address. So let's say 10.0.0.1/24. So we will have just two elements for now. We don't need them more, but another element would have the same amount of the keys. However, they would be a bit different. So the name and enabled would be the same. However, we'll change the value of the enabled key to the false to show you how some condition is working. And instead of IPv4, we would have a VLAN and value tagged. So we have created the starting point for us. How we would use conditional in this case, so we will create a for loop, which we have covered with you guys the previous session. And within this loop, we would be making if conditions around the elements of our list. So we would create also another list. We would call it config lines, which would be an empty list for now. And during the execution of our for loop, and based on the conditions that we would have using if construction, we would be adding the elements to this config lines. So we'll create a sort of loop, as we was discussing in the previous session. We'll create an entry if-face entry, so it's temporary loop which contains elements of our list. In we provide the name of our array. What we would be doing here inside, don't forget actually to do the 5-space indentation from the beginning. So all the nested activities in the for loop, in the if, anywhere else, you need to have 4-space indentation. So within this indentation, we would use the function append. If you don't know how to use function append, and if you don't know what the lists are, take a look at our videos. take a look in our playlist where you look in this video for, and this code express series number 4, which contains the description of the list. So using the append function, we could add the elements to our list, and what we will be doing here, we will use this function applied to our list config lines in the way as you could see on your screen. So we would be adding the using the formatted string option, string interface. Then we add an entry point for template. So, and using the format function, we add that the name that we would like, or the values that we would like to add here, is a key name from the our elements of the list. So we would add two actually entries here. So the first would be config line. The second, we would be adding just a dummy exclamation mark just to split the configuration parts between each other. So it's our for loop, and after we have added this element, we would create another for loop just to print the content of the created element, or of the created loop, and we will be just printing here the output of the array list config lines which we have created during running their first loop. Let's briefly execute our script. To do that, we need to make our script as executable. And now, once we're executing the script, you see that we are getting the interface ETH1, interface ETH2, and the exclamation mark. So this is our starting point. So it takes quite a while, but we have recapped how to work with list. We have recapped how to work with the dictionaries. We have recapped how to work with the for loop. Now we could start focusing on our conditional themselves. So the first condition is, you see, you start creating sort of configuration line which you could then send to your network elements. At some point in future, we'll be speaking about the models, how you could send it to the network elements. At this point in time, we'll take a look how to just produce the config which you could copy and put to your network elements. So if we analyze the structure of our keys of our dictionary, I mean nested elements in our list, we have 3 elements. So name, we have already used it. We have a key enabled, which tells us whether interface should be up or down. And that's why the first condition that we are doing is a classical one, which is perfectly working for the Boolean logic, where we just check if the condition up, so if the condition true, for Boolean logic, meaning if the certain element has value true, the condition is true, and if the element is false, obviously it has a false. So for Boolean logic, the best way, and that's originally how the if-else construction come into, we say if the name of our key within the nested dictionary, so enabled. We don't need to put anything more in this condition because it automatically means such a construction if interface, and it means that if the value is true, then it would be executed. We have in one case true, in second case false. So that's why I would say if the interface, this enabled key is true, we will add to our list the keyword no should done. We will add 2 spaces to indent just to visually create a nice picture. So we would add no shut down, and in case the first condition was false, we create another action which allows us to create an entry into our list that the interface is should done. So just to recap, if this key is true, if its value is true, so then we will execute the first action. If it is not true, so in any other case, meaning if it is false, we execute the second action. Let's execute our script right now. And you see we are getting, for the first interface, we have a key enabled with the value true, and that's why you see on your screen no should down. In the other case, we would have the interface as interface key enabled is false, meaning the condition match is false, so the first action is not taken, and the second action is taken. That's why you see shoot down on your screen, dear ladies and gentlemen. So continue further. So the basic if-else we have taken a look. What else? There is another very useful concept in the if and else. It allows you to check the presence of a certain key in the dictionary or the certain value of the element inside the list. It allows you to find like to make a logic if some key is present in that you do something else, you do something else. And in this case, what we will do, we would create a if-elif condition. So basically you would say if our temporary variable containing a dictionary for this element. So we create it in the way, so we put the name of the key, in this case IPv4, it might be also IPv6, so that's why I'll take a look how to do it. So in dictionary, so basically this construction means if we put a string IPv4, in this case it means if the key with the name IPv4 is within the dictionary, so if there is such a key, then this condition will be true. We would add else here. So another thing within the if-else condition, within the if or elif, where you put your some conditional, some checks, then you could have not only one check, you might have multiple, and they should be conjuncted to each other using or and statement. And therefore we added if IPv6, if IPv4 in entry. So if we have such a key or if IPv6, we might have this key as well. Why not? And again, if it's present in this particular value, in this particular dictionary, then we would execute this condition. And what we will do then, we'll speak about it in the moment. We could have, we will for temporary, we would create another elif. So it works in the case if this condition is checking, like we are doing the actions inside and getting outside. If it is not true, we are going to the next entry, and the next entry here is elif. So elif, in the same way like as if, should have a certain conditional statement associated. So we say in another case, if there is a key called VLAN in interface entry, so basically we are checking if there is a key VLAN existing, then we will do another action. So another important point, you might have nested conditions as much as you like, because it allows you to create a multiple level of hierarchy, to create a very sophisticated checks. And what we do further inside this first statement, we say if the key is IPv4, then what we would do, we would add the element to our config lines list with the configuration commands, having the following statement: IP address or IPv4 address actually, and then we provide the using the format string the value of this key. So we copy the name of this temporary variable and we put that the key is IPv4. So, and that's it. We don't need to have in if necessary, we don't need to have necessary else or elif. So if is only important part. So that's why the first statement would be doing, so we would be checking if there is such a key, we add this. If there is no such a key, we do nothing, because we don't provide any else or elif action. Same we are doing for IPv6. So if there is an IPv6 entry, we would like to add IPv6 address. So that would allow us to add a proper interface. Why we are doing in this ways and not if-elif construction? Because it might be that the same interface has both IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. In this case, we need to make sure that both of these addresses are added to our configuration lines, so that once we send the configuration to the device, both IPv4 and IPv6 addresses are present in. So we have created this statement. And what we're doing right now for the second part, we would create similar way, and we will add a following statement. So we will check what is the value of the key interface, or the key VLAN within our dictionary. So assuming it might be both tagged and untagged, like it's port either trunk or access one, we're checking using the matching of the string values or integer they're using the same. So double equal sign means we are checking that the left side should be should be equal to the right side, and we're checking the key. If it is tagged, we would add to the config lines the keyword switch port mod access, switch port mod trunk, and in case this is yes, so that's correct. And we're taking the second condition would be we would like to compare this with the string access. Then we would be adding the keyword access. So the last thing that I think I have forgot to add is we're speaking about the switch, because this configuration is applicable to Cisco OS device, to Arista EOS device, to Cisco Nexus. So we would also add here, at an additional step, we would be adding generic the either switch port or no switch port. And in the case if we have IP address assigned to the port, we would need to put it to the no switch port state. Whereas if it is a VLAN entry assigned, we would add here the device, the switch port command. So we're almost done. So what we have done, we have created if-elif construction. So in first case, we're even using multiple conditions, which works in the way if either of this condition is true, then the action would be taken. So these actions. In other case, we're checking either the VLAN is present in, then this action would be taken. Let's execute the script. And you see that in first case, we're getting that the port should be no switch port, no shutdown. We put in the IPv4 address. In the second case, the key was enabled false. It is shutdown, it is switch port, and it's for the modded run. So that's almost good. The last thing that I would like to cover with you today, so besides it's more like a correction that I would like to add here some spaces to make the code more nicely outputted. The last thing, you might have a complex rules, not only having two elements or multiple elements. And what we would add in this case, we should have, we shouldn't have by default IPv4 and IPv6 together. It might be treated as a mistake. And what we would like to check, so we would like to make sure, so if both IPv4, general IPv4 or IPv6 is present in, and VLAN is present in as well. So we would like to put the interface to the shutdown state because it means there are some mess on them. So let's add IPv4 another IP address. Let's put the interface to the true, and we would also add them VLAN untagged. Untagged, so untagged, sorry, I'll just change that. So we have a third element in the list. So if we execute our code right now, see that we have IP address interface got in the IP address and no switch port. However, it's not true just because it has checked first of all for IPv4 and we have VLAN entry as well. So what we will do then in our conditional check, we would add here the following. So we will add the brackets. Around brackets is the way how you group the elements in your conditions, and that's why at this group we could add next thing. So we will add it as a not VLAN in, or properly what to say, VLAN not in, and we provide this entry. So what does it mean? So in the brackets, we're making like the first step. We're checking if key IPv4 or key IPv6 is present. If either of these check is true, the result of the whole brackets is true. And so together with this condition, we need to make sure that there is no keyword VLAN is present. So that's why this should be true, and if this is true, then both together is true, and the code is executed. And in the other, in the second statement, we would also do similar operation. So we will say if we land in the entry and not, and we just copy the content of our this bracket. So meaning the not keyword makes an inversion of the value. So if either of these true, it should be inverting to the false not, and then the condition would not be making. And if both of them are false, their joint result is false and is negated by not into the true. And we would also, as I said, the third statement to this elif, also to this elif, it would be else, and we would need to make sure that the port should be shut down. We have already added its status in this conditional check driven by the key enabled. So what we will do, we know how to work with the list. We just remove the element using the pop command. The entry input to the pop command is an index. We could use a -1 index, which means the last element, so the last that was added. This is shut down or not shut down, so we remove despite what was there. And we add the shut down line, so just to make sure that the interface would be shut down explicitly if it has both IP and VLAN and true. And we'll also add them additional description telling us description there is a as with verse. Basically, it tells us that there is something wrong with the variables. We should check our data model. Now, if we execute our script, we see that it's working properly. In the first case, we have only IP case, and that's why we have no shutdown, no switch port, and we have IP address, and the status of the interface is taken based on its enabled key. In the second case, the status of the interface is also driven by the enabled key, and as we have a VLAN, we put it to the switch port and mark trunk as it is. However, if you have both IP and VLAN, something wrong, and we explicitly put interface into the shutdown. That's how variables work. If you like our video, subscribe to our channel, like it on the YouTube, post it on your social medias, and stay tuned with our Code Express series. Thank you very much for watching, and see you the next time.